that the offense is going to have to lead the way this fall for NC State football. We also know the wide receivers will have a massive hand in doing so. But who do we see as a potential breakout candidate in that wide receiving room?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we're inching closer and closer to football season, and what that means for us, we're on the on-ramp back up to each and every day during the week, getting back up to 5 days a week. You're going to see our faces a whole lot more before we get closer to kickoff at the end of August. So today we're talking the wide receiver room. I saw a tweet from NCAAF Nation on Twitter. They put together a list of breakout candidate wide receivers from FBS teams across the country. It was a list of 36. Their selection for NC State was Keenan Jackson. Now, Keenan Jackson was a freshman last year. He's been on Kenton's radar for quite some time, so I know Kenton was fired up about this selection. We're going to talk about potential breakout candidates from that wide receiver room. But Kenton, I'll go ahead and give you the floor. What are your thoughts on Keenan Jackson as their selection?
As much as I love Keenan Jackson, this could have went to a multitude of guys in that wide receiver room for a multitude of different reasons. You could see with KC moving on to Texas A&M, there's a massive void at wide receiver number one. So who do you get to fill that spot? You could say the most likely candidate to potentially do so, Wesley Grimes, who was a very consistent contributor all last year. And if you go by production, I believe he was outside of Justin Jolie and KC, the next man up in that regard. And then you could say, well, in terms of talent and potential, you're looking at Noah Rogers as a guy that's an absolute freakazoid. He's really good with the ball in his hands. He can high point the ball well. What can you ask of a receiver to do that he cannot do well? And then you look at another guy that is a freak athlete that we didn't get to see virtually any of last year in Jonathan Paylor, who, I mean, let's just be honest, who didn't switch him over to running back in our NCAA, in our college football 25 dynasties and turned him into a Heisman front runner that fed families, right? You've got all of these different guys, but the guy that I said coming out in a class that was deep with very good wide receivers was the best, Keenan Jackson. He's a guy that looks like he just understands the game at an extremely high level. Is he going to be a 4-2 burner type of guy? No. Is he a 6'5", big body box out type of guy? No, but he understands the position. He catches the ball with his hands away from his body, and he just knows how to find DB's blind spots. He just knows how to get up in that blind spot, and then next thing you know, he's breaking one way or the other, and because he's in the defensive back blind spot, they don't know what's going on. So I'm not surprised by this pick, but there were a multitude of very valid options.
Yeah, to your point, he's not the biggest of wide receivers. He's not the fastest of wide receivers, but he does a lot of the little things very well. He gets in and out of his breaks very well. He can read the defense very well. And at some points of the season, even with all the uncertainty at quarterback and the offense in particular, he kind of became a little bit of a safety blanket at times for CJ Bailey. I know that Keenan got into the end zone twice last year, and it almost seemed like that was essentially like ahead of schedule. I didn't really expect to see as much of Keenan Jackson as we did last year, but you saw those glimpses. You saw what he could be initially in just his freshman year. Coming into his sophomore year, I think he's an excellent selection for a breakout candidate. But I want to go back to your main overall point here. I think you're 100% right. The beauty of this question for NC State, there's like 6 different answers that can all be correct. Noah Rogers, we thought, was going to be a clear-cut wide receiver one last year. Not saying it's not there because of the talent, but the offense as a whole was a mess. We didn't really get to see the full potential of a lot of the wide receivers we had on the roster last year. So if you're turning the page to 2025 and you have a new OC in Kurt Roper, you're moving into year 2 of CJ Bailey, potentially the offense could be structured in a way that you're going to air it out a lot more than you did last year. You might get a whole lot more production from not just one wide receiver, but maybe 4 different wide receivers. You could look at Noah Rodgers as the main breakout candidate because he is, in fact, in line to break out. We didn't get to see him much last year. If we do this year, he'll be a breakout candidate. Keenan Jackson, like I already said, great answer for that. Wesley Grimes, I think, is another good answer for this. Kind of in that same breath as Noah Rodgers, just didn't get enough of him last year. But when we did see him, he had an amazing catch that I still think of a lot on the road at Cal. It was tiptoeing on the sideline, kept the drive alive. Just a glimpse of the talent that he possesses. We need more of that from Wesley Grimes this year. Another guy that really never gets talked about is Terrell Anderson. I think much like Keenan Jackson, we saw him at times last year. He kept a couple drives alive for us and showed what he could do very briefly. And then, like you said, Jonathan Taylor. What kind of role is Jonathan Taylor going to have this year? We're going to see him in the slot. We're going to see him out wide. Might we see him in the backfield? I think that's a decent option for him as well. There's so many guys that are in line for breakout season that you really can't go wrong in just picking one. I know, Kenton, you certainly agree with Keenan Jackson. I do too. I'm so gravitationally pulled toward Noah Rodgers. Him going to Ohio State and being essentially like the prodigal son coming back to Raleigh, one of the most talented wide receivers on paper that maybe we've ever had at NC State. I want to see what Noah Rodgers can really do with more volume in terms of both targets and receptions, him stretching the field long, building more chemistry with the quarterback and CJ Bailey. I think a lot of people will probably agree with this, but Noah Rodgers is my breakout candidate in 2025.
I mean, with all due respect to Coach and I and the offensive staff last year's offense felt like putting a speed limit on the Autobahn. It felt like bringing a bunch of NASCARs out and, having Dale Earnhardt Jr. behind the wheel, only to say, by the way, guys, this is a residential neighborhood. Do not go over 35 miles per hour. You look at the amount of talent that was there, and even if your argument is, well, all of the talent that was there did not produce, therefore they're not actually talent. We saw what Kevin Concepcion could do when he was rolling at his highest clip. Did we put him in those situations again this year? Or last year, rather? It did not happen. So I don't think that you could really make that an argument. Same thing for Jolie in terms of when he was used, when he was targeted, we saw the effectiveness that was there. I don't think that anybody has a solid argument for Justin Jolie did not need more targets because of this. I have access to the all 22. I have seen the play. You are under spells, people. If you have watched that and said, oh, he just doesn't get open enough or whatever your belief would be. There were stars doing star things all over the place that, I understand CJ Bailey was a freshman last year walking into a situation that he wasn't thought of as the guy until a serious injury that was a basically career ender for Grayson McCall. But there's just so much there. There's so much meat left on that bone. This year, Kurt Roper, I need you to be a junkyard dog, brother. I need you to truly let these guys off the leash. Your job is not to get pretty and get cute and get fancy. Your job is to create mismatches and get the ball to playmakers in space, whatever that looks like. We don't have an offense that has a bunch of very big, powerful guys in terms of our running game or anything like that, so we can't do the ground and pound. So the only other option is to find your stars in space, okay? Does that mean that we shouldn't run the ball and all that? Absolutely not. You got Hollywood Smothers back there, hell of a back and all that, but we need to make the mandate. Get it to the playmakers in space. Let's see who will be the star breakout wide receiver of the group. Clips just came out with a new album called Let God Sort Them Out. Well, let's let that happen with this passing game. Let's let the numbers sort them out, because I believe that we have a bunch of guys on this team that'll be playing on Sundays in that receiver room, but we have to get them the ball in positions to succeed. Spamming wide receiver screens will not get the job.
Yeah, very well said. And it's so easy to forget when you are struggling, the offense looked as bad as it did last year, how much talent you still have, regardless of what it looks like as a finalized product. Our inability to move the ball was at times mind-boggling, because it's like, guys, we have Noah Rodgers. We have Justin Jolie. We have Hollywood Smothers. How are we struggling on 3rd and 3 to consistently get first downs against some lackluster defenses in some instances? For Kurt Roper, I mean, you already said it best here. You have got to let your dogs be your dogs. I can't believe I'm going to quote Urban Meyer here because I hate Urban Meyer, but your stars have to be your stars. You have Noah Rodgers. Other teams do not. You have Justin Jolie. Other teams do not. You have to use that to your advantage. Get guys like Wesley Grimes and Jonathan Taylor and Keenan Jackson and so on and so forth. Get them into open space and let them do what they do best. Make guys miss. Probably make them look stupid in the same breath. You have got to make your stars your star. You cannot afford to be overcomplicated again this year because we saw where it gets you last year. That is nowhere, or in other senses, a 6-6 season. Cannot do it. There is too much talent on this offense to look as bad as they did last year. Take what you learned last year, apply it to this year, and let your dogs be your dogs. That is our message to offensive coordinator Kurt Roper. But tell us in the comments, who is your number one breakout star in the wide receiver room for this coming fall in 2025? Coming up next, we're switching gears into women's basketball. It's actually been a while since we got to talk about Wes Moore and the ladies. Wes Moore just pulled yet another rabbit out of a hat, a massive addition, especially so late in the cycle. We'll talk more about what this means after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Tuesday sponsor is Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets, sporting tickets, you name it tickets to go on sale. Only all that waiting for you to just lose your spot to a show that you've been dying to see. Live music and live sporting events should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. So that's where Gametime comes into play. Gametime makes getting concert tickets, live sporting events, you name it, easier and faster than ever. Prices will actually drop the closer you get to showtime, so you can save up to 60% off of their last-minute killer deals. If you're tired of the endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Gametime does all the work for you. Gametime zone deals pick the best seats in the house in any section for your convenience. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, live sporting tickets, you name it tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Middle portion of our Tuesday show, transitioning into some women's basketball talk. Wes Moore, it's been an extremely quiet offseason for Wes Moore, probably too quiet by all accounts. Up to today, on Tuesday, he only had one portal addition. That is Cadence Samuels joining us from UConn. We have now landed number 2. Camille Pierre from the Vanderbilt Commodores is now running with the Pack for this coming season. There's been some chatter about whether or not she will be eligible or not. I'll get into more on that in just a second. But Pierre nearly was a walking double-double last year in the SEC conference for Vanderbilt. Kenton, what is adding that level of talent to Wes Moore's squad right now do for this coming season?
Well. You know, I was told, Wes Moore may be losing his recruiting touch. He needs to use the portal more. He needs to go out there and pick up players more. Do I have to say it? Is the Andrew Slater effect taking hold to women's basketball as well? Because I want y'all to think about something, okay? And Grayson will get into deeper detail on this later. But it's been widely speculated that the disagreement and why things fell apart at Vanderbilt was over the Skrilla, the Greenbacks, the Casholas. That's at least what some people are believing here. Well. You know who does have the Greenbacks, the Skrilla, the pay to make this happen? Oh, who's that? Just little old Wes Moore. Just chilling in the cup. You know what I mean? This is big time, man. This is really, really big time. And, for a team that had a phenomenal season last year, again, it's gotten to the point where we expect greatness from Wes Moore, and yet he never disappoints. He never disappoints. We don't look up and say, damn, this was a really bad Wes Moore team. A bad Wes Moore team is a first-round exit. That's what a bad Wes Moore team looks like. And then he bounces back from that with what? Again, another Elite Eight, another Final Four. So, Wes Moore, he continues to do his thing, and this get is another big one because, and this is according to SB Nation, so if I'm wrong here, please put it on them and not me. As a sophomore, She was the only player last season, Camille Pierre we're talking about here, was the only player last season to average at least 20 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals per game. Alexa, play deads because the forwards are in trouble in the ACC. She's about to give them a little bit of problems. She's about to be a little bit of a headache for some teams, and I'm going to love to see that headache in red and white.
Potentially Westmore standing on business and stacks of money that has not been used this offseason. But no, Camille Pierre is a 6'2 forward. She's a sophomore, a rising junior, so she still has 2 years of eligibility. I guess the cloud of kind of uncertainty about what this means. So 2 weeks ago, this was an article written by Vandy's 247 website. Vanderbilt women's star Camille Pierre is no longer a member of the team, the program announced on Monday. Multiple sources told Vandy 247 that the Commodores dismissed Pierre from the program, unquote. So yes, she was dismissed from the program. It was ultimately, it sounded like a mutual agreement from both sides that they would part ways. So I said that she's a transfer. Some senses she's kind of not. So this is kind of like a loophole situation. She technically did not transfer from Vanderbilt to NC State. She left Vanderbilt and then enrolled at NC State as a student, where now she's hoping to join the basketball team. So it's kind of a backwards way of looking at your typical recruitment. But by all accounts, it seems that she will be eligible for this fall. There's some question about whether or not she would need a waiver. Reportedly from Noah Fleischman of the On3, the Wolfpacker, she will not need a waiver because she enrolled at NC State instead of transferring 1-to-1, because the transfer portal is closed and has been closed for a couple weeks now. So technically not a transfer. She's an enrollee. So she is coming to NC State, reportedly will be eligible. And as I already said, averaged 20-9 last year in the SEC. And she's doing this at a high clip. Last season, she shot nearly 50% from the field. This is in the SEC, which is one of the best women's basketball conferences in all of women's college basketball. Does it at a high level consistently. And this is exactly, and I do mean like exactly what the doctor ordered for Westmore. Being a slow offseason, still needed some size in the front court. You're getting exactly that and possibly more in Camille Pierre.
Absolutely. You get size, you get talent, you get versatility, you get somebody who can switch defensively, move her feet on the perimeter. You get somebody who's not afraid to play passing lanes. You get somebody who has some court vision. You get somebody who has a face-up game as well as a back-to-the-basket game. So I'm excited about this pickup. I'm excited about this get. You know, you talk about needing size on the men's basketball team. The women's team needed size and size that can score. I think this addresses both of those needs in a major way.
She feels like the equivalent of like Darian Williams for the men's team. She's a proven scorer, has done it at a high level, and fits an exact need for what Westmore needed to fill out this roster. Before this commitment of Pierre, there's a lot of pressure, I guess you could say, on Zoe Brooks, on Zam Jones. They're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting because, well, it was a slow offseason. There were several pieces that Westmore had identified in the portal that just never formalized for one way or the other. Now you're adding in Camille Pierre. She can handle the ball at some point. She's a forward, but from what I've seen, she can do a little bit of the ball handling. Proven score at an extremely high level, 20 points a game last year. We'll take that and some over at NC State for this fall. I mean, this feels exactly what Westmore needed. And so late in the cycle, too, like late July here, it's kind of rare that you see a player of this magnitude change schools here. Just, I mean, mere months before the fall semester will begin. But better late than never, but never late is better. This is a massive, massive addition. Cannot be understated how big this is for Westmore and the women's Wolfpack. And coming up next, we're going to close out our Tuesday show talking some money. We do that a lot on here, but Carter Finley will most likely be renamed here in the near future. How does that change in terms of revenue sharing and all that? This, that, and the third we'll discuss after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes of our Tuesday show. Wanted to talk some branding for NC State. Big picture, we're talking Carter Finley Stadium. Now, we talked about this, I think it was back in the winter when this was initially introduced. NC State was shopping around the naming rights for the athletic director position. They did that, and there's a tweet that I'll bring up here in just a second from Brian Murphy. But now that they've accomplished that, they're still looking into selling the naming rights of Carter Finley Stadium. Now, we talked about the importance of this, what it can mean for NC State to have a little extra walking around money. We also mentioned revenue sharing now in effect for NC State as of a couple weeks ago. So I'll bring up this tweet now from Brian Murphy. It says, and I quote, NC State got $5 million for the Title II athletics director position. The McMurray family director of athletics. Wolfpack is now looking for naming rights sponsor to Carter Finley. And separately, the Board of Trustees approved one donor naming request for NC State athletics and the Wolfpack Club on Tuesday. So, Kenton, what are your thoughts now that revenue sharing is in effect and NC State is still looking for some extra cheddar, potentially selling the naming rights to Carter Finley Stadium?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you think about the limits being 20 million. Again, that's not as saying, hey, every team has to spend 20 million. That's just the most you can spend via revenue sharing. And this is not 20 million to your university. It's 20 million from your university to the student athlete. So of course they're going to be, digging between couches trying to find every piece of loose change you got here. Our boosters have done a fantastic job. The mega donors have done a fantastic job. You really can't ask for too much more. But with that being said, if you are going to ask for more, you need to give folks something in return. And why wouldn't you in a situation like this, right? Why wouldn't you have a situation where these facilities and these, the stadium and things like that are going to be named after people who have very meaningfully contributed to this team's success? It is a different world now. And one thing that you and I talked about a lot was, hey, we will give during the pass for games where, you're going up against a team where the quarterback costs as much as half your roster, basically. But with folks giving like this, with folks coming in at this level of like, hey, I want Carter Finley to have my name on it as well, to say, the Boone family field at Carter Finley Stadium or whatever the case may be, that's a really big deal there.
Every little bit matters. And I certainly understand the angle of folks being like, well, if this is just going to turn into a bidding war for virtually everything, it feels a little bit soulless. It feels like everybody's just chasing the extra buck. It's all about money. These teams are getting in an arms race for players and coaches and whatever else. Unfortunately, folks, like that's just where we're at now. And I do a lot of listening to, his name is Tyler Siskey. He was a former recruiting specialist for both Ole Miss and Alabama a couple of years ago. For some reason, he always pops up on my TikTok. So whenever I'm on there, I tend to stop and give him a listen. But he's extremely knowledgeable on all things college football. And one thing that he said that really stuck with me is essentially college football is going to get to a point where it's going to essentially be like NASCAR or like minor league baseball. When you're at a minor league baseball game, the outfield wall is just littered with advertisements. They're everywhere. Every inning is sponsored by whatever. Every car in NASCAR has a million sponsors all over it. That is essentially where college football is heading, under the current model at least. And so the idea of renaming Carter Finley Stadium, it sounds crazy to a lot of people because it's like, how on earth could you rename something, as iconic to NC State fans as the football stadium, because it's been that way for so long? I don't think anything is safe. I think you could rename Lenovo Center again in the not so distant future. You could rename parking spots in the parking lot of Carter Finley Stadium. Like, everything is up for grabs nowadays, because if you want NC State to stay competitive for players, coaches, XYZ, it's going to come down to money. Whether you like it or not, that is where we're going. I think they really opened Pandora's box way too early in terms of NIL. Well, not the concept, but how they're handling it. It just, all of it was unregulated. It's just like a ready, set, go situation. And nobody was really ready for what that was going to mean. And that's basically why we're here now. It's just an all-out race to see who can get the most money. NC State looking for naming rights of Carter Finley Stadium. That's a big proponent of that. You have to stay competitive every single way that you can make an extra buck. I get it feels kind of sleazy. I get it feels kind of soulless. I get it, but that's the nature of the beast these days.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. At the end of the day, you either keep up with the times or you get left behind. Those are your two options. So what would you rather see this team do? Get a little, quote unquote, soulless, get a little, hey, whatever we can do for money, or would you rather see the red and white of state get left behind? The choice is yours, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, so like just for example here, you see on this tweet, that NC State made $5 million just off the naming rights of the athletic director position. So Boo Corrigan is the McMurray family director of athletics at NC State, Boo Corrigan. Now, $5 million just for that. Imagine what you could potentially get for Carter Finley Stadium. All of that money in conjunction now with revenue sharing, which is another interesting point to this, getting that money each and every year, NC State has a lot more autonomy on what they can do with it, because revenue sharing, what that means is instead of your NIL collective handling the payment of players, the pay for play part of this, that is entirely up to the university's athletic program now. So like NC State, let's say this is purely hypothetical. If you're going into 2026 and CJ Bailey's going to be your quarterback again, and let's say he wants $2 million, he's not negotiating with Wolfpack NIL anymore. He's negotiating with NC State athletics. Like the football program, Boo Corrigan, the athletics program, they are handling that now. They handle all of that. NIL is essentially, they fill in the crack. Any additional fundraising they can provide for players or facilities, anything, that's now the new purpose of NIL, which is still equally as important. But revenue sharing going directly to the schools are trying to make a buck every single way they. So now tying this back into the naming rights of Carter Finley Stadium, I think you're going to see several more things get renamed in the near future. Like I said, it could be maybe the indoor facility gets bought out again by another family or a company, or you could see a company name for the football stadium. It might be Bojangles Stadium for all we know. I mean, personally, I think that'd be awesome, but I'm always going to call it Carter Finley regardless of what it gets renamed to. But that money that NC State can bring in, it really does matter in the new current landscape.
Absolutely. And when you talk about what this looks like and how this money is flowing and all that, what I predict will happen is revenue sharing will be for your stars and NIL will be for everybody else. These are guys who we need to get taken care of right away. These are priority guys. And then the guys that we want to get taken care of after them, we'll get them there. Or if a star is asking for too much for us to clear in just revenue sharing, we then have to make that kind of agreement with NIL. And what could also happen potentially is a situation where it's like, hey, revenue sharing is a flat rate across the board. So then NIL becomes exclusively reserved for your stars. That'll make up the difference between the base level from revenue sharing and everything beyond that.
So just another thing to monitor here, probably won't be like immediately soon, but relatively soon. Don't be surprised at all if Carter Finley Stadium does get another naming right sponsor, but it will be a good thing for NC State on the whole. That'll do it for us here on Tuesday. As I said, we're ramping back up into each and every day yet again. Football season's on the horizon. That means we're right back here in y'all's face, getting you prepared. Thank y'all again for joining us here on Tuesday. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment section, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Wednesday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.